On today's episode of Locked On Mariners, how a couple pitcher injuries around the league could impact Seattle. Plus, Logan Gilbert has a splitter now? Let's talk about it. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up? It is Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. This is Trident Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description below. On the show today, we'll discuss how the Mariners dodged a bullet with Frankie Montas and if his injury now opens the door for, say, a Chris Flexen or Marco Gonzalez trade with the Yankees. Jacob deGrom is also dealing with an injury at the start of Rangers camp. And finally, Logan Gilbert has apparently been working on a splitter this offseason. We'll talk about how that could fit into his repertoire a little bit later on. And be sure to stick around for the midway point of today's show. We'll tell you then how you can enter for a chance to win a signed Walter Ford card from Colby's collection. But Colby, let's start here with Frankie Montas. It's the big news of the day in the baseball world. Jeff Passan tweeting out a couple hours ago that Yankees manager Aaron Boone has confirmed that Frankie Montas will undergo shoulder surgery that may very well end his season before it even begins. Obviously, he was on and off the injury report throughout the course of the 2022 campaign. And amidst that was a pretty big trade target for the Mariners for quite some time before they ended up pivoting or, ended up trading for Luis Castillo at the deadline. And I think, looking back in retrospect now, especially with the context of Montas' surgery, upcoming surgery rather, it seems like the Mariners made the right decision there. And the Yankees right now in some pretty big trouble in their rotation at the moment with Montas being out for the year. And this easily could have been the Mariners at this point in time. So, looks like chills. Dipoto did it again, right, Colby?
No, I refuse to acknowledge that sentiment. What's interesting is that we knew Montas had a little bit of a shoulder thing at the time of the trade. So this really didn't come out of nowhere. You remember he made the start against the Mariners and he left after the first inning because the velocity was down and it was a shoulder issue. And he got back and he pitched a little bit before he was traded. But this is why you don't want to make a desperate trade, right? When the Yankees missed on Castillo, they felt like they needed to make a trade for a, let's say, similar pitcher. So they went out and they made it. It's a pretty reasonable deal, but they did give up a lot of potential starting pitching options for them, like Waldichuk and Sears. And to make matters worse here is the fact that they then went out and they traded Jordan Montgomery for Harrison Bader, a trade that didn't make any sense to me at the time. And now in retrospect looks even worse because for Montas, they traded Waldichuk, Sears, and they traded Montgomery because they acquired Montas. So that trade really cost New York 3 potential legitimate, back end starters. Or in the case of Montgomery, a mid-rotation guy, and Waldichuk certainly has the ability to be, a mid-rotation or better. So, it was a very costly trade. The rotation was already a bit of a question for the Yankees, particularly the back end, mostly because of Montas' injury concerns. But now that we know that he's not there, it's a pretty sizable hole that they have to fill. They do have some options in-house that are, more than capable of giving them innings, but it is a big blow. And it's why you really don't want to risk major assets on players who are hurt. And as much as Montas came back and he pitched, clearly that didn't get any better because he wasn't very good for the Yankees down the stretch. And now he's presumably out for the year. I think they said the earliest he could possibly be back is September, and they're just not going to do that. And if you're Montas, why would you do that? You're about to be a free agent. So essentially the Yankees traded, a really, really good prospect in Waldichuk, a pitcher who shows, some real promise in Sears and others. And the trade cost them from their own choice, Jordan Montgomery. And they ended up getting about 10 starts out of Montas before he's going to hit free agency. So, Jerry, pretty good at his job. And apparently so is Justin Hollander. I have a feeling that he's the one who negotiated that trade.
And that's why you pay the premium, right? You pay for the sure thing instead of
pay the extra.
Yeah, instead of diving into a pool of uncertainty here with someone like Montas, who again, like you mentioned, had the shoulder thing was a public public knowledge at that point. Everyone
he was
knew.
On the IL just before he was traded.
Right. He literally had to have a start right before he was traded just to prove like he could throw. And so, so I mean, just looking back on that. Obviously, the trade for Castillo is huge in itself, just in a vacuum, but also adding the context of not trading for Montas in that situation either makes that even bigger of a decision by the Seattle Mariners.
Right.
So props to them.
Right, and like you said, that's why you pay the extra, right? You pay the freight because if they had done the deal for Montas, my guess, and this is purely speculation, is that it would have cost them probably Noelvi, Marte, and Bryce Miller, and maybe even somebody like Emerson Hancock to kind of compensate the A's for not having that major league ready starter. And now we look at it and we say, well, not only do you have Castillo instead of Montas, but you also got to keep Bryce Miller and you also got to keep Emerson Hancock. And now you're in a position where Miller might be a huge piece of your division attempt, your attempt to win the division here. So sometimes it's just worth it just to pay the little bit of extra to get the better and safer player. And Jerry and Justin and the Mariners front office, they deserve a lot of credit for recognizing that and just doing it.
So naturally, this begs the question now, whenever, a rotation loses a pretty notable piece from it, that, could this open the door for a Marco Gonzalez or Chris Flexen trade? Specifically here with the Yankees. I mean, on the back end of the Yankees rotation, they still have Luis Severino and Domingo Germán to go along with, Carlos Rodon, who's the new addition, Garrett Cole, Nestor Cortez. But again, one of those guys on the back end, I would assume Germán was going to be the odd man out unless they were going with a 6-man rotation, unless that was their plan if Montas was healthy. So it seems like they would like someone else involved there. So do you see a fit there with Flexen or maybe Marco? And by the way, we should mention, Ryan Divish reported a couple of months ago that the Mariners were close on a 3-team deal with the Yankees and Phillies that involved Marco Gonzalez. However, Marco was set to go to Philadelphia in that deal. The Mariners were set to receive Joey Gallo in that trade, but maybe the Yankees would have some interest in Marco as well. What do you think with that?
I don't think there's much of a shot. Like you mentioned, the Yankees have some viable options on the back end. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think kind of like I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to guess that, part of the thing that Mariner fans are going to start to throw out there is probably going to be something in the neighborhood of like Flexen for Glaber. And no, that's not going to happen. In fact, if you could probably still trade for Glaber Torres. And you do have the at-bats to give right now at third base, second base, DH. But essentially what you have to look at is you have to look at Flexen as just being part of that deal and not providing much value. So like, what would Glaber Torres cost you without Flexen, right? That's probably what you're going to have to pay. And then you're just going to throw Flexen on top of that. So I really don't think they're interested in Marco. He's got 2 years left. I mean, they're not expensive, but they're not nothing, $6 million this year, $12 million next year. And Flexen's just a 1-year guy. Like he's a rental. So I really don't think there's much. I think they'll just roll with Germán. And they have some interesting arms, that they can roll with too. It's kind of a bummer, that Waka, signed with the Padres, just a few hours before this news broke. But I have to assume that the Yankees knew that Montas was probably headed to the, IL for a long time before that. So we'll see what they do. I think they just kind of roll with their in-house options because it's hard for me to imagine that they think that Chris Flexen or Marco Gonzalez is an upgrade, and that they would be willing to pay the Mariners enough for Seattle to jettison pitching depth right before the season starts. And so, I mean, that's the thing too, right? Is like these players are still valuable enough to the Mariners, Marco and Chris Flexen, that you just don't want to give them away. Because you might need both of them as soon as opening day. So, you got to kind of be careful here and walk a fine line. So I don't think they match up that well on a trade. right now. We get to the end of March, maybe, but
Yeah.
right now I just don't really see a path to a deal.
Nevertheless, while you don't want to root or celebrate, injuries, one of the teams that you're going to be competing with, towards October just got worse. And so that does help the Mariners. And there's another injury that's cropped up here with another big name pitcher that could help the Mariners in the immediate future. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything, like the Lakers at -4.5 against the Pelicans, or the Bulls at +2.5 against the Pacers. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So before we get into this other big starting pitcher injury, Colby, let's tell the folks here how they could win a signed Walter Ford baseball card.
Yeah, so we're doing a giveaway this week, guys. I'm giving away, unfortunately, because Ty picked it, I'm giving away my autographed Walter Ford, the Vanilla Missile card here. It's numbered, it's autographed, it's in great condition. And I'm sending it to one of you guys. To enter is very simple. All you have to do is make sure you're subscribed to this channel, the YouTube channel. And make sure that you leave a comment on any of the videos this week. If you leave a comment on every video posted this week, your odds go up. But if you left a comment on either Monday or Tuesday's episode already, then you are entered still. But entering or leaving a comment in every single episode does increase your odds. So on Monday, sometime during the show, I will have the random generator pick a comment from a random video from the last week, and that person will have a couple days to respond to me, and we'll get this card shipped out to you. We're also doing a little bonus here. If we get to 6,500 YouTube subs by the time we pick the Walter Ford card winner, I will give away an additional card that Ty will randomly select. Some of the options for giveaway, I have Matt Brash, Cal Raleigh, Mike Cameron, Colton Wong, Jared Kelnick,
Tyler O'Neill.
Tyler, yeah, I have a Tyler O'Neill, Mariners prospect Tyler O'Neill autograph card. So, and future Mariner. So
Chills.
yeah. So there's quite a few options. Ty will randomly pick one of those, and we'll give that one away if we get to 6,500 subs.
Mm-hmm.
We're about 300 away right now, and so we have 5 days. Mm-hmm. So go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you'll be entered to win the bonus card.
Sweet. Well, you guys should do that because it's a Walter Ford card. It's the Vanilla Missile, and I mean, you need to get in early here. This is a great opportunity for you to get the a signed rookie card of the guy who's eventually going to become the greatest pitcher in all of baseball history. I mean, how could
if you ask him?
If you ask him, at least. If you ask him, yeah. All right, so one guy who a lot of people refer to as the greatest pitcher of all time, or one of the greatest pitchers of all time, Jacob deGrom, who just recently made his way into the AL West, is dealing with what the Rangers are calling a minor injury, just some left side tightness. But we've seen this story for the last few years with Jacob deGrom, where it starts with something like left side tightness, then it snowballs into a 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 month type of thing. I mean, this is what we had talked about when deGrom signed with the Rangers. A lot of people went nuts over this. They were like, oh, this makes the Rangers a legit contender now. And we were over here like, it's okay. Good for them.
Makes them better.
Yeah, they got better. But yeah, I mean, we'll see if this is actually a serious thing. There's been some reports out of a lot of the spring camps in Arizona about how cold it is right now down in Arizona and how weird that is, and the field conditions and all this stuff. So they're probably just taking it, taking the leaning towards the precautionary side of things here. But still, it's concerning when the biggest addition of your off season is already dealing with some stuff, especially when he has a history like the one Jacob deGrom has. So yeah, the Rangers, I mean, even with deGrom, right, the Rangers aren't like what do you think the Rangers ceiling is this year realistically, Colby? Because I see a lot of takes out there, even from Mariners fans themselves, saying the Mariners, or the Rangers rather, are better than the Mariners after the off seasons these two teams have had. I don't buy that at all. I think I've gone on record on this show, maybe it was our Patreon show, that I don't get it with the Rangers. I still think that their bullpen is a mess, that they still have holes offensively that need to be filled, that they're at least a year away. So really, losing deGrom or having deGrom doesn't move the needle for me much. Is that the same for you, or how do you feel about deGrom and this team?
I think the Rangers are at best like an 83, 84 win team. And that's if everything goes right. And that's if, you get 25 starts from deGrom, and you get, 25 starts from Andrew Heaney, and like he continues to do what he did last year, and he doesn't regress back to what he was with the Angels. Like I don't like the Rangers build at all. It feels like they tried to make a bunch of shortcuts, and they haven't built the foundation for a winning team. And they've just kind of started to put the walls up already. It's, I have a friend who always talks about, do you build your house on a solid foundation, or do you build it in the sand? And it feels like the Rangers are building their house, in the sand, because not only is it reliant on some injury prone pitchers staying healthy and performing really well for you, but it's also, you're kind of racing the clock, because Corey Seager's getting older. Marcus Semien is getting older and worse. He had a nice year last year, but Marcus Semien's not a superstar. We're never going to see 2021 Marcus Semien again. And you just kind of start to look around. You say, well, okay, Seager's got a back thing already. He's going to move to third eventually. That's a lot of money going to one player. It's a lot of money going to a second player in Semien, who's kind of starting a slow decline. You've spent a ton of money on a pitcher who hasn't made more than 20 starts in like 3 years. You're just kind of built, and around them, you're not really putting quality major leaguers now. Jonah Heim and Nathaniel Lowe are certainly Lowe. I always get those two mixed up. They're certainly.
I think it's only Lau for Brandon Lau. I don't. Okay. I think all the other LOWEs in baseball are Low.
Okay.
But
yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to say the Rangers don't have talent, because Adolis Garcia is a nice player, Lowe's a nice player, Heim is a nice player, Semien and Seager are both still really good. Martin Perez certainly had a great year last year. Can he repeat it? I mean, we'll see. It's been a while since he has, so we'll see. And the bullpen is an absolute mess. They do have some prospect depth, which is nice. It's a pretty good system still, but they haven't shown that they can develop that system into anything yet. So all their good players right now, aside from Heim, kind of developed elsewhere and acquired by the Rangers. So we'll see how it looks. I certainly could be wrong. There's a lot of talent in Texas, and bullpens are fickle. You never know. It could look like a terrible bullpen on paper and then just be one of the 5 best in the American League. We don't know. That's certainly a possibility, but I think there's a lot of, there's a house of card quality to the Rangers. And I think we're only just seeing like a small fraction of what could go wrong right now, and how flimsy that house of cards is.
They just seem like the flavor of the month to me. They spent more money, after spending a lot of money last offseason. They spent more money to get someone like Jacob deGrom, who, again, when healthy, is not only one of the best pitchers in today's game, but one of the best pitchers of all time. Yeah. But still, it's, again, that is a huge question mark, because and you can say that with everyone, right? You can concern troll with every single pitcher there is out there, but with deGrom specifically, there's a history there. There's actual tangible evidence that this guy might not be able to stay healthy for the course of a full season, because he hasn't been able to the last few years. So that, along with them, banking on the upside of Andrew Heaney, which we still really haven't seen. We've seen a lot of strikeouts, but we haven't seen him be a mid-rotation starter. If anything, he's been a number 4 really at best. John Gray had a decent enough breakout this past year. He's a pretty good pitcher, someone that we liked for the Mariners last offseason. Yeah. But overall, I see so many holes still on this roster, and I just can't wrap my head around anyone thinking that this is a wild card contender unless everything goes right. And we know that everything is not going to go right. And so,
Right.
unless they get off to a hot start to the point where they can use one of the better farm systems in all of baseball to help them go get better and go get, legit major league pieces at or around the deadline, unless they position themselves like that, to be able to justify doing something like that, I don't see it. I don't see it at all for that team. I don't see them as a real threat for the Mariners. Maybe we roll this tape back in 4 or 5 months and I look like a complete idiot. I hope not. But I do not see it from the Rangers perspective. Maybe next year, just not this year. I see, obviously the Astros are the big threat in the AL West, but I even see the Angels right now as a bigger threat to the Mariners than the Rangers right now, just going off of what the Angels did this offseason.
Sure. I mean, again, it's not just DeGrom either. It's Martin Perez, who has a pretty extensive injury history. It's John Gray, who's had one really good year, and I like John Gray, so I don't want to talk too much smack about the guy. I think he's a good pitcher. It's Nathan Eovaldi, who we know is hit or miss, literally, both on the mound and in terms of health and performance. And Andrew Heaney, who, his best season was with the Dodgers, which, not to take away from the season he had last year, it was good. The Dodgers also turned Tyler Anderson into an all-star. So can they repeat that? I don't know. We'll find out. And even when I read off this lineup, like it's a solid lineup, but it doesn't scare me. Simeon, Seager, Lowe. Good.
Yeah.
Really good. 1, 2, 3. Adolis Garcia. Not terrible.
Doesn't get on base, but he hits for a lot of power.
Strikes out a lot. Yeah. He's a good player though, still.
Yeah.
Jonah Heim. The Mariners figured out how to pitch to Heim. Like, he was a non-threat last year. After he destroyed them 2 years ago, they figured out how to pitch to him. Velocity up, Heim can't touch it. Josh Young, Brad Miller, Leotis Tavares, Josh H. Smith.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Any team that's starting Brad Miller in the year 2023, and I'm sorry, Colby, I know you love B-Rad, but any team that is starting Brad Miller in 2023, it's just that's not a team.
Imagine
that
starting
I look at
Brad Miller and not Tommy La Stella as your DH.
and I know that I'm going to get comments now that are like, well, your team is starting Jared Kelenic. Whatever. There's more upside there with Jared Kelenic than Brad frickin' Miller. All right. Anyway,
we will not besmirch Brad Miller on this. I need to buy his card.
Yeah, you should, and then we'll give it away, obviously. All right, let's move on here. Last thing that I wanted to cover today, not a lot to talk about today, admittedly. We were kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel for topic ideas today, but there was a very interesting video that came from Driveline last night featuring Logan Gilbert, who was throwing a splitter, and it looks pretty good. I mean, we only saw one throw of it, which had 14.5 inches of horizontal movement and then minus 3.9 inches of vertical movement. It's pretty nice for a splitter. And of course, Logan's featured a changeup a little bit, but it's also been, I mean, it was his 4th most used pitch this past year. I think it was around 200 or so attempts. He actually found some success with it, though. I think it generated like a 31.5% whiff rate. But what could switching over to a splitter do for Gilbert?
Nothing. So, yeah, the thing with Gilbert's changeup is when he got it near the zone, it was a very good pitch, particularly against lefties. The problem is getting it near the zone, like close enough that people would swing at it. So, the splitter is a pretty tough pitch to control. It also, I believe, puts some reasonable strain on the elbow and the shoulder, so it's kind of a dangerous pitch. I do wonder too, though. Gilbert's a fastball up type of guy, and the splitter is usually better tunneled with a low fastball. So I wonder how effective this pitch could be for him. Again, if it's his 4th pitch and he's throwing it fairly in. As long as he doesn't overuse it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It should be fine in terms of shoulder and elbow injury risk. So to me, it's cool. Gilbert is a tinkerer. Like he's in the lab all the time. He's a thinker. He really does, think of pitching as a bit of a science as well as an art. So it really shouldn't surprise us that Gilbert's been tweaking grips and trying different things. So it's tough when you get one splitter in a controlled bullpen and Driveline's picking the one that they get to show you. Like, we don't know if that's a viable pitch or not. For all we know, that's just Gilbert threw one for fun. And they're like, oh yeah, let's put that out there. So,
right.
Yeah, we'll see if he features it in spring training. It's one of those things, do you want to keep it in your back pocket for the regular season? Well, probably not, because you got to throw it to get, used to it and understand how to use it. So I would imagine we'll see it at some point this spring. But until we see it against major league hitters, until we see it against, Ohtani and Jordan and all these other guys, right? Until we see it against actual major leaguers, it's tough to get too excited about it. But it's that time of year, right? We get to see Matt Brash's cutter. We get to see Logan Gilbert's splitter. We get to see Diego Castillo wear a black t-shirt and everybody's like, oh my God, he's lost 15 pounds. And you're like, just kind of looks like Diego to me. So, we get to see Tom Murphy's crazy hair, and everybody, it's fine. Like, I get it.
I can't believe that he's able to grow hair like that. That is wild.
I don't think he was naturally, but also I don't care. Do whatever makes you happy, Chief. Because that flow is ridiculous now. And we've only seen Tom with like one, like a buzz cut. So,
I think he had it grown out when he was rehabbing and he was in the dugout during the playoffs or something. I think he had some curly locks going on or something.
Oh,
like
okay,
that
nice. Good for Tom, man. Good for Tom.
Yeah.
It looks good. So
yeah, looks good.
I'm jealous.
Look good, feel good, play good, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So it's that time of year, right? And it's going to get ramped up a little bit in the next few days when more position players come in. We'll get the report on Kelnick and
who
I can see Kelnick.
Who do you think is going to be in the best shape of their life? If you had to guess, if you just wanted to throw one out there,
we're going to hear about this guy being in the best shape of his life.
Yeah.
It's usually a vet.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Colton Wong, but he's there, and nobody said that. Wong showed up a little early, so
yeah.
Best shape of his life.
And he's working with Perry Hill already.
Yeah, I know. Everybody thinks Perry Hill's like a god.
The Wizard's going to work, man.
Sure. Trying to think of somebody who's not in camp yet.
Also, don't besmirch the great name of Perry Hill. Perry Hill is a god.
Perry's great. He left us on red, but it's,
3 years ago before this show,
whatever.
Before we had clout.
Oh yeah, we have clout. Okay. That's a tough question. Because I'm trying to think who hasn't shown up yet, right? Because I feel like if they've shown up, then we already would have heard that. But also maybe not, because there's not a lot of reporters out there yet.
Right.
JP is just going to look skinny no matter what. JP could spend 20 hours a day in the gym and he'd still look like he was 6'3", 160. So
yeah,
probably not.
I think we are going to hear some things about JP though.
Yeah,
this year,
yeah.
In the next couple of weeks, where they're like, "Oh yeah, he's changed his swing a little bit," and blah 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 blah, and it's
he still wraps the bat over his head.
Yeah,
we've
we've seen the videos from Driveline, and I mean, we're not.
I don't notice a difference.
We're not swing experts, obviously, but
it looks the same to me.
It looks,
and that's kind of a problem. So
we have a theory about his swing, but you can only find out what that theory is on patreon.com/control-the-zone. Check it out.
Ooh, I'll be interested to hear this theory too. So
we've already talked about this theory.
I don't remember anything I say.
It's my theory. And it's very, it's very.
And
serious.
I definitely don't remember that.
It's a very serious theory too.
By the way, Sam Haggerty taking ground balls off the wall. So,
yeah, I saw that. Yeah, it's interesting.
We'll see
because they avoided playing him in the field like the plague last year. So.
In the infield,
in the infield, rather, yeah.
Leonis Martin's going to come in just like you're going to see his abs through his baggy t-shirt. I will say, did you have somebody for this best shape of your life thing?
I think it's going to be Kelnick.
Do you?
I think it's going to be.
That's
Kelnick,
hard to beat, man. That's hard to beat because
Yeah.
Kelnick has always been in great shape. I am going to say I got nothing.
Or Robbie Ray. Or Robbie Ray.
We've seen Robbie Ray though. He looks. I'm surprised Robbie didn't throw his bullpen in jorts. Honestly, I think they should allow that. I will say. I think I'll just guess Taylor Trammell. He's gonna come in looking a little bit more swole, I guess. Like I don't know exactly.
Looks like he's been lifting a little bit, yeah.
Sure, because the Mariners don't have anybody who's just like out of like Jesus Montero, right? Like there's nobody who needed to lose 40 pounds. And
like
then
Cal Seager comes in like really skinny all of a sudden, like
and like flexible, like so I think we'll hear like different like regiments, like, oh, he switched this up, he did this, but I don't think we're gonna be like, we're not gonna look at somebody and go like, holy cow, that looks like a different person.
Cal Raleigh has come into camp after losing 25 pounds.
Dear God, please don't.
Medium dumper.
Size 36 waist dumper. No, I think, honestly, I bet Kelnick comes in like a little bit like, I don't want to say slimmer, but like sleeker, I guess is sure, like,
yeah.
I think people are going to look at Kelnick and be like, oh, that's a little different.
I more so picked him because he just feels like the guy that the PR team is going to want to pump up a bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, because as we know, best shape of your life guys always have great seasons. So
it would be funny to go back and try. There's no way to do that, and I'm way too lazy to try and figure out a way to do that. But it would be funny to go back and track like which players got referred to as being in the best shape of their life and what they went on to do that.
Do you remember like in 2019, like Felix came in and they're like, oh, Felix is trimmed down a little bit, and it was like, no, he didn't. Like all we saw from Felix were his skinny chicken leg calves, and people were like, oh my God, it looks like he's dropped like 30 pounds, and it's like, no, he looks Felix, the same.
The Felix, a man of my heart, chicken legs.
Yeah. So, I mean, Seager had a big drop, and then Seager got hurt that first year, late in spring. You remember that? So that kind of torpedoed everything. So was that 2020 or was that was 2019, right?
2019. Yeah.
It might have been 2020. Either way, whatever. I think Kelnick is probably one of those guys. I could see, you know what? Actually, George Kirby.
Ooh.
I think Kirby looks really slight. I think he's going to come in. He's going to be a little bit more beefed up. So I'll say George Kirby. And that will end the worst 6 minutes of podcasting we've ever done on the show.
No, we've done worse. We've done a lot worse than this. All right. Lastly, well, speaking of spring training, speaking of players that are in the best shape of their lives, we'll be talking to someone that's down there already tomorrow. We're going to be talking to Mariners broadcaster Gary Hill Jr. on tomorrow's show. Going to be fun to catch up with Gary. Haven't talked to him since I ran into him at the wild card game in Toronto. So looking forward to catching up with Gary, talk about his offseason, talk about what he thinks about this offseason for the Mariners, and what he's seeing so far down in Arizona. So look forward to that. But that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez. It's DANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. Well, Colby got way too ahead of himself there before I could finish and hit the video. And there you go. There's the proof for all of you doubters that Colby doesn't hit anything. When I say Colby hit it, he is actually live hitting these pre-recorded videos, intros, outros that we have here. Anyway, thank you again for making us your first listen. Now make your second listen. Locked On MLB Prospects host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace. Now you can hit it.
Do I click it now?